Hello, everyone. Welcome to English in Advance. I'm Jessica, your host today. Here on our channel, we are dedicated to helping you master the English language. We share new content every single day, designed to sharpen your skills. Whether you're focusing on speaking with more confidence, listening with greater understanding, or navigating the nuances of everyday conversations. Today, we have a special episode prepared for you. A deep dive into C1 level English listening practice. We're going to journey through engaging stories, practical examples, and realistic conversations that will not only test your comprehension, but also help you absorb the language naturally and truly boost your fluency. So find a comfortable spot, relax, and let's begin. Let me start with a story that a good friend of mine, Ethan, shared with me just last week. It's a perfect example of handling pressure in a professional environment. Ethan works as a project manager for a large tech company downtown, a job that's often demanding and fast-paced. One Tuesday morning, he arrived at the office, grabbed his coffee, and sat down to plan his day. But before he could even open his calendar, an email popped up in his inbox. It was from his boss, and the subject line was marked URGENT, a word that always makes your heart beat a little faster. The email explained that a key client meeting had been moved up. A very important presentation, originally scheduled for Friday, was now happening that same afternoon at 3 p.m. This left Ethan with just a few short hours to prepare for something that would normally take days. For a moment, he felt a wave of panic. His mind started racing with all the things he had to do. But then he took a deep breath. He remembered a piece of advice he once received. In a crisis, the first step is to quiet the noise. So he closed his other emails, put his phone on silent, and took out a notepad. He quickly gathered his initial notes, which were scattered across different documents and sticky notes on his desk. He found the preliminary data analysis, the key marketing points, and the project timeline. He then immediately called his small team of 3 people for an emergency huddle. He explained the situation calmly and clearly, without projecting his own stress onto them. He said, "All right, team, we have a challenge, but I know we can handle it. Here's the plan." He broke down the massive task into smaller, manageable parts. He assigned one person to finalize the data charts, another to polish the presentation slides, and the third to double-check the client's recent feedback to ensure their points were all addressed. He knew that the key was to focus on one single task at a time, rather than getting overwhelmed by the big picture. He tackled the script for the presentation, writing out the main talking points, while his team worked on their parts. They communicated constantly, sharing updates and asking questions. By lunchtime, they had a solid draft. They spent the next hour rehearsing, making small tweaks, and ensuring the flow was logical and persuasive. By the end of the day, just before 3 p.m., they were ready. Ethan walked into that conference room, feeling prepared and confident. He delivered the presentation successfully. It was clear, concise, and answered all the client's questions. His boss was incredibly impressed. When he told me this story, Ethan emphasized that the real victory wasn't just finishing the presentation. It was how the team managed the pressure. The key, he said, was to remain calm, communicate with absolute clarity, and focus on one step at a time. This story is such a powerful reminder of how important it is to manage stress and communicate effectively, especially when the stakes are high. Now let's shift from the corporate world to a community setting. Another interesting situation happened to my neighbor, the wonderfully kind Mrs. Gable. She has lived on my street for over 20 years and is always thinking of ways to bring people together. She had this wonderful idea to organize a charity event for the local children's hospital. The thing is, she'd never done anything like this before in her life. The sheer scale of it, organizing a public event, made her incredibly nervous. She told me she had many sleepless nights just worrying about all the things that could go wrong, but her desire to help the community was stronger than her fear. So, she started small. Her first step was to create a detailed plan. She broke down the entire event into phases. Phase 1 was fundraising. She prepared a simple but heartfelt proposal and began contacting local businesses. She walked into the local grocery store, the bakery, and the bookstore, and she explained her vision. Her passion was contagious, and many of them agreed to donate goods or small financial contributions. Then came Phase 2, volunteers. She posted flyers at the community center and in the library, inviting people to help. Soon, she had a small team of enthusiastic volunteers. Together, they planned all the activities for the event. They decided on classic games for the children, like a sack race and face painting. They arranged for a local band to play music and invited a respected community leader to give a short speech. On the day of the event, the sun was shining and the park was filled with families. Everything went perfectly. You could hear the joyful laughter of children as they played the games. The adults mingled, enjoying the music and the food. The local newspaper even sent a reporter to cover the event, which was a wonderful surprise. Later that week, Mrs. Gable told me that the most rewarding part, the moment that truly touched her heart, was not the money they raised, but seeing everyone from the community working together. She paused when she said this, and her voice was filled with emotion. It was the image of neighbors, people who usually just waved to each other from their cars, now laughing and collaborating for a common cause. Her story teaches us a valuable lesson that with careful, methodical planning and genuine teamwork, even the biggest and most intimidating projects can become a resounding success. Let's bring it down to a more personal level now and talk about a simple daily life conversation. These small interactions are the building blocks of fluency. So imagine this scenario. You are at your favorite local cafe on a Saturday morning. It's bustling, but has a cozy atmosphere. You want to order a coffee, but you also want to have a pleasant, brief chat with the barista. It's an opportunity to practice your English in a low-pressure situation. You could walk up to the counter and say something like, "Good morning. It smells amazing in here today. Could I please have a large cappuccino?" Sani. By starting with a small compliment, you create a friendly tone. The barista, who is now smiling, might reply, "Good morning. Thank you. A large cappuccino, it is. Would you like to try one of our new pastries today? We just baked some almond croissants." Hey, this is an invitation to extend the conversation. You can respond with enthusiasm. "Oh, that sounds perfect. An almond croissant sounds like exactly what I need. Yes, I'll take one of those as well." Notice how these polite questions and a little bit of small talk make the whole interaction smoother and more enjoyable for both of you. It changes a simple transaction into a pleasant human connection. These are the moments where language truly comes to life. Now let me share an example from a travel experience. Last month, my husband and I decided to escape the city and went to a small, quiet village nestled in the mountains. We wanted to do some serious hiking, so we met a local guide named Matteo. He was a man who had lived in the village his whole life and knew the mountains like the back of his hand. On our first day, we were feeling a bit overconfident. We had a map, a compass, and we thought we were well prepared. But after a couple of hours, we realized the map was unclear in certain sections. The trail wasn't as well marked as we'd expected, and we took a wrong turn. A feeling of unease started to creep in as the trees began to look a little too similar. Matteo, our guide, remained completely calm. He didn't criticize us for getting lost. Instead, he smiled and said, "The paper map can sometimes lie, but the mountains, they always tell the truth." He then started to explain how to navigate using natural landmarks. He showed us how to follow the direction of a stream, how to identify certain types of trees that only grow on the north-facing slopes, and how to use the position of the sun to get our bearings. He encouraged us to rely on our senses, to listen to the sounds of the forest, and to observe the world around us, instead of just staring down at a piece of paper. By the end of the day, following his advice, we reached the summit of the mountain. The view was absolutely breathtaking, a panoramic vista of rolling hills and distant peaks. That experience taught us a crucial lesson. Staying patient and truly listening to expert advice is so important, especially when you find yourself in unfamiliar or challenging situations. This brings me to a very useful tip for improving your listening skills. When you listen to someone speak English, try to pay attention not just to the words they are saying, but also to the nonverbal cues, their tone of voice, the pauses they take, and the words they choose to emphasize. These elements carry a huge amount of meaning. For example, when my friend Ethan was explaining his stressful work situation, he really emphasized the word focus. He said the key was to focus on one task at a time. That emphasis immediately helped me understand what he considered the most critical part of his success. His tone conveyed the intensity of that moment. Similarly, when Mrs. Gable talked about her charity event, she spoke with a steady, warm tone, but she took a noticeable pause just before she said, "Seeing everyone working together." That small pause gave the phrase so much more weight and highlighted the emotional core of her story. It was about teamwork. By noticing these subtle details, these musical elements of language, your understanding of spoken English will deepen and improve in a very natural and intuitive way. I want to share another story with you now, this one about my friend Leo, who decided to start learning English again after many, many years. He had studied it in school but had forgotten most of it. He felt very insecure about his skills. He decided that the best way to practice was by listening to English podcasts every single day during his commute to work. At first, it was incredibly difficult. He told me he could only understand a few isolated sentences here and there, and the rest was just a blur of sounds. He felt discouraged, but he didn't give up. He made a commitment to himself. He listened to the same episode repeatedly 2 or 3 times. The first time, he would just try to get the general idea. The second time, he would listen more closely with a notebook in hand, writing down new words or phrases he heard. He would then look them up later. The third time, he would try to shadow the speaker, repeating some of the sentences aloud to practice his own pronunciation and rhythm. It was a slow and sometimes frustrating process, But after about a month of this dedicated practice, he started to notice a real change. He found he could follow longer conversations without getting lost. He started to understand jokes and expressions he hadn't known before. His story is a wonderful testament to the fact that daily practice and a healthy dose of patience can make a massive difference in language learning. It's not about having a special talent, it's about consistency. Sometimes understanding English at a deeper level means knowing the cultural expressions and idioms that native speakers use all the time. These are phrases where the literal meaning of the words is very different from the actual meaning. For instance, if you hear an American colleague say, "Okay, team, let's hit the road," it doesn't mean they want you to physically start hitting the pavement. It's a very common idiom that simply means, "Let's begin our journey," or "Let's leave." Ikawi. Or if a friend is describing a task and says, "Don't worry, it's a piece of cake," they aren't talking about dessert. They are using an idiom to say that something is very easy to do. Learning these kinds of expressions is what makes conversations feel more natural and enjoyable. It helps you understand the true meaning behind the words and connect more deeply with native speakers. Let's try to practice a short dialogue now. Imagine you are at a public library. It's a large, quiet space with shelves stretching up to the ceiling. You are looking for a specific type of book, but you can't find the right section. You see a librarian at the help desk. You could approach them and say, "Excuse me, I hope you don't mind me asking, but I'm looking for a book about modern architecture. I'm having a little trouble finding it. Could you possibly help me?" The librarian might look up from their computer with a friendly smile and respond, "Of course, I'd be happy to help. That section is located on the second floor in the Arts and Design wing. Are you looking for a general overview or do you need any specific recommendations?" This is a great opportunity to get more information. You can answer, "Actually, yes, please. I would love a suggestion for something that is both informative for a serious student, but also easy to read and engaging." Notice how using polite phrasing like "excuse me" and "could you possibly help me," along with clear, specific questions, helps to create a smooth and productive conversation. Here's another story. This one from my own experience. One evening a few weeks ago, my husband and I decided to get adventurous in the kitchen. We wanted to cook a new, complicated Thai recipe we had found online. The list of ingredients was long, and the instructions had many steps. We made several mistakes while we were preparing it. At one point, I misread the amount of chili and added way too much. We also realized halfway through that we had forgotten to buy coconut milk. We had to pause and think about what to do. We realized that reading the instructions very carefully from start to finish before beginning and taking our time with each step made a huge difference. In the end, after a few creative substitutions, the dish turned out surprisingly delicious, although very spicy. We sat down to eat and just laughed about all of our little mistakes. This simple experience was a good reminder that mistakes are an essential part of learning anything new, and that patience and a good sense of humor always helps. Let's move on to another real-life situation, this one from my friend Chloe, who works as a marketing consultant. Last month, she had a client who was extremely particular about every single detail of a new advertising campaign. This client had a very specific vision and was not easy to please. Chloe had to prepare multiple proposals. For each one, the client would send back a long list of revisions. She had to explain every choice she made, from the color of a button on the website to the specific wording in an advertisement. At first, she told me she felt incredibly frustrated. It felt like she couldn't do anything right. But then, she decided to change her perspective. Instead of seeing the client as difficult, she tried to focus on truly understanding their point of view. She started asking more questions. Instead of just making changes, she would call the client and say, "Could you tell me more about what you're hoping to achieve with this headline?" Or, "I see you're not fond of this image. What kind of feeling are you hoping the visuals will create?" By asking these open-ended questions and listening carefully to the answers, not just the words, but the passion and concern behind them, she finally began to understand the client's vision. She then presented a final plan that not only met, but exceeded the client's expectations. This story teaches us that empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another, combined with careful, active listening, can resolve even the most challenging and frustrating situations. Now let's think about conversations in a professional setting, like an office meeting. Imagine you are in a meeting with your team, discussing a new project. You have an idea, but you want to share your opinion without sounding too direct or aggressive. You could say something like, "I'd like to suggest a slightly different approach. I think the current plan is strong, but perhaps we could consider adding more customer testimonials to support our strategy." Notice the polite phrasing here. Words like, "I would like to suggest," and "perhaps we could consider," soften the statement. It makes your suggestion sound professional and confident, but also collaborative. It invites discussion rather than shutting it down. Here's a story from another trip that can also teach us some useful expressions and strategies. My husband and I went to a small coastal town last summer. We really wanted to explore the local culture, so we decided to join a cooking class led by a renowned local chef named Isabella. During the class, Isabella explained the traditional recipes in English, but she also used many local words for ingredients and cooking techniques. At first, it was quite challenging to keep up, but we learned quickly by observing her actions closely and repeating the new words after her. We weren't afraid to ask, "What does that word mean?" Or, "Could you show me that technique again?" By the end of the class, we had learned so much and could prepare a full traditional meal from scratch. This experience really shows that immersion, surrounding yourself with the language, and active participation are fantastic ways to help you understand English in a real-world context. Let's practice another short dialogue. This time, imagine you are at a bookstore, looking for a new novel. You could approach a staff member and say, "Hello, I'm hoping you can help me. I'm looking for a novel that is both a thrilling page-turner and also thought-provoking. Could you recommend something?" The bookseller might think for a moment and then respond, "Certainly. In that case, I would suggest The Midnight Library. It's very exciting and has a compelling plot, but it also has some deep reflections about life choices." You could then reply, "That sounds absolutely perfect. That's exactly the kind of thing I was looking for. I'll take it. Thank you so much." Notice how using descriptive words like thrilling and thought-provoking makes your request much clearer. It helps the other person give you a better recommendation, and it makes your English sound more advanced and articulate. Here's another example from everyday life, this time about my neighbor, Mr. Evans. He's a retired gentleman who decided he wanted to get back in shape. He decided to start jogging every morning. On the very first day, he could only run for about 10 minutes before he was completely out of breath and had to stop. He felt exhausted and a little discouraged, but he didn't give up. The next day he went out again, and the day after that. Every single day he increased his distance just a little bit. Sometimes by only a minute or two. He learned to observe his breathing, to find a steady rhythm. He focused on pacing himself for the long run, not on sprinting. After a few weeks of this consistent effort, he could run for over an hour without stopping. This story isn't just about jogging, of course. It's a wonderful metaphor for learning any new skill. It shows how consistent daily effort and a great deal of patience can help you improve anything, including your English abilities. Now let's explore a conversation at a cafe, but this time with a colleague from work. You might be having a coffee break together. You could say, "I wanted to ask your opinion on the new project proposal. I've read through it, and I'm curious what you think. Do you feel it aligns with our team's long-term goals?" Your colleague could respond, "That's a good question. I think it has a lot of potential, but my one concern is the timeline. We might need to adjust the deadlines to be more realistic." You can then reply, "I agree completely. That was my thought as well. Let's set up a short meeting this afternoon to discuss those adjustments in more detail." Notice how professional conversations often involve seeking opinions, expressing agreement, clarifying points, and suggesting next steps, all without being too blunt or confrontational. Here's a personal story from my life. Last weekend, my husband and I visited a small local history museum in our city. The museum was run by a very knowledgeable and passionate guide named Mr. Khan. He explained the history of each exhibit with such detail and enthusiasm. He used some words that were new to me, especially historical and technical terms. Instead of just nodding along and pretending to understand, I made sure to listen very carefully. And when I was really unsure, I would politely ask questions. I'd say, "Could you explain what that word means?" Or, "Could you tell me a little more about that time period?" By actively engaging with him, I understood the stories behind the artifacts so much more deeply. After the visit, I felt more confident using some of those new words in my own conversations. This shows that asking questions and actively engaging with English speakers is one of the best ways to improve your listening and comprehension skills. Let's look at another professional scenario. Imagine you are in a position where you need to give feedback to a team member on their work. This can be a tricky situation. You want to be helpful, but you don't want to discourage them. You could phrase it like this: "I really appreciate all the hard effort you put into this report. The research is very thorough. I think it could be even stronger if we added some charts or graphs to visually support the analysis. What do you think?" This phrasing is very effective. It starts with positive feedback. "I appreciate the effort." Then it offers a constructive suggestion. "Add some charts." Finally, it ends with a collaborative question. "What do you think?" Which invites them into the conversation and makes them feel like a partner in the improvement process. Here's a lighthearted story about learning from mistakes. My friend Owen recently started baking as a hobby. He wanted to try a new, ambitious recipe for artisanal bread. He was in a bit of a hurry and was trying to do too many things at once. In his haste, he accidentally used salt instead of sugar. He didn't realize his mistake until the bread came out of the oven, looking perfect but tasting terrible. He was disappointed, of course, but he also learned a valuable lesson: to read the recipe carefully from beginning to end and to double-check all his ingredients before mixing them. His next attempt was absolutely perfect. This small example is a great reminder that making mistakes is a natural and necessary part of the learning process, and paying close attention to detail matters, in both cooking and in learning English. Now, let's practice a slightly longer dialogue, this time at a busy train station. You might be trying to catch a train to another city. You could approach a station officer and ask, "Excuse me, I'm a bit lost. Could you please tell me which platform the train to Manchester leaves from?" The station officer might respond, "Certainly. The train to Manchester leaves from platform 4. The next one is scheduled for 3:15 p.m. Are you catching the express service or the regular service?" This is an important detail. You could answer, "I'm taking the express. Platform 4 at 3:15. Great. Thank you very much for your help." Notice how asking clear questions and listening carefully to details like the time and the platform number is absolutely crucial in real-life situations like this. A small misunderstanding could cause you to miss your train. Today, I want to share another story about a colleague of mine named Ben. He recently took on the massive task of organizing a virtual conference for an international company. This meant coordinating with speakers and attendees from all over the world, across many different time zones. It was a logistical nightmare. Some speakers were late logging in due to time differences. Others had technical issues. Their microphones weren't working, or their cameras were blurry. Ben had to remain incredibly calm and handle each problem one by one, efficiently and professionally. He kept the audience informed of any delays, and he skillfully adjusted the schedule on the fly as needed. By the end of the long day, the conference was a huge success, and the company sent him an email praising his incredible professionalism and grace under pressure. From Ben's experience, we can learn that flexibility and quick problem solving are absolutely essential skills, not just for work, but for navigating the unpredictable challenges of everyday life. Now, imagine a situation where you are having a discussion with a client about a project timeline. The client wants the project done very quickly. You might say, "I completely understand your requirements and the urgency of this project. I believe we can meet the deadlines if we prioritize the key, most essential tasks first. Does that sound feasible to you?" The client may think for a moment and then respond, "Yes, that seems like a reasonable approach. Let's focus on the most critical aspects first and then move on to the others." Notice how using polite and understanding phrasing, "I understand your requirements," and offering a clear, logical solution creates a positive and productive conversation, turning a potential conflict into a collaborative plan. Let's look at another story from a travel experience. Last summer, my husband and I visited a small town near the mountains. We decided to stay in a family-owned guest house, and the owner, a warm and friendly man named Mr. Rossi, shared the most fascinating stories about local traditions and history. He invited us to participate in a community festival that was happening that weekend. We were a bit hesitant at first, not wanting to intrude, but he insisted. We ended up learning traditional dances from the local villagers. We tried all sorts of amazing local dishes we'd never heard of, and we even helped decorate the festival area. This immersive experience taught us that truly engaging with local people and participating actively in their culture is the absolute best way to understand a new place. And of course, to practice your English in a very natural and memorable way. Here's another professional scenario to consider. Imagine you are in a team meeting and you want to introduce a new idea that is quite different from what the team is currently doing. You could say, "I'd like to propose an alternative approach to our current marketing strategy. I've been doing some research, and I think this new method might significantly increase our efficiency and reduce costs in the long run. I'm happy to discuss the details with the team." A team member might then reply, "That's an interesting suggestion. Could you provide us with a brief outline of the key points so we can evaluate it more effectively?" Using clear, concise language like this helps you convey your ideas effectively. It shows confidence in your idea without being overbearing or dismissive of the current strategy. Let me share a story from my friend Mia. She started a small online business a couple of years ago, selling beautiful handmade crafts. At first, she really struggled with the marketing side of things. She made wonderful products, but nobody knew about them. She spent countless hours learning about social media advertising, how to write engaging product descriptions, and how to take professional-looking photos of her crafts. It was a huge learning curve. Slowly but surely, her sales started to increase. She began to receive wonderful, positive feedback from customers all over the country. Mia told me that the key to her success was learning from her mistakes and being willing to adapt her approach. The marketing strategy that worked one month might not work the next, so she had to be flexible. From her story, we can understand that persistence, a willingness to learn new things, and flexibility are absolutely key to success in any new venture. Let's practice a real-life dialogue. Imagine you are at a nice restaurant for dinner and you're not sure what to order from the menu. You could say to the waiter, "Hello, everything on the menu looks so delicious. I'm not sure which dish to choose. Could you possibly recommend something that is popular but also fairly light?" The waiter might respond, "Of course. I would highly suggest our grilled salmon with roasted vegetables. It's one of our most popular customer favorites, and it's not too heavy." You could then reply, "That sounds absolutely perfect. I'll try that. Thank you so much for the recommendation." Notice how asking politely for a recommendation and listening to the suggestion helps create a smooth and pleasant interaction, making your dining experience even better. Here's another personal experience. One evening, my husband and I decided to take on a small project to renovate a small section of our garden. We wanted to plant some new flowers and add a small seating area where we could enjoy our morning coffee. We planned the layout, chose the plants we wanted from the local nursery, and started the hard work of digging. Initially, we faced some difficulties. The soil in that part of the garden was very hard and rocky, and we realized we didn't have the right tools for the job. We adapted our plan. We borrowed some heavy-duty tools from a neighbor, and we worked carefully and methodically. By the end of the evening, the little garden section looked beautiful, and we felt a real sense of pride and accomplishment. This story teaches us that careful planning and creative problem-solving can lead to success, even when unexpected challenges appear along the way. Now let's think about another professional situation at work. Suppose you are giving feedback to a colleague on a report they have written. You could say, "Thank you for sending this over. I really appreciate the amount of effort you put into this report. The data is very comprehensive. I think it could be even stronger if we included some visual charts to help support the data and make it easier for the leadership team to digest. What are your thoughts on that? Also, your colleague may respond, "That's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that. I can definitely add some charts and update the report by tomorrow morning." This shows that offering polite, constructive suggestions and fostering a sense of collaboration can improve the quality of work while also maintaining positive and professional relationships within the team. Here's a story about learning English in a rather unusual but effective way. My friend Noah decided he wanted to watch cooking tutorials on YouTube to improve his listening skills. He loves to cook, so it seemed like a fun way to learn. At first, he could only catch a few words here and there, like onion, chop, and oven. But he didn't get discouraged. He would write down any new vocabulary he heard. He would repeat sentences aloud to practice his pronunciation, and he would watch the videos with English subtitles first, and then again without them. After a few weeks of this consistent practice, he was amazed to find he could understand entire tutorials without any subtitles at all. He could even explain the recipes to his friends in English. This example demonstrates that combining a personal interest or a hobby with language learning can make the entire process much more enjoyable and highly effective. Let's practice another dialogue, this time at a train station. You might approach an information desk and ask, "Excuse me, I'm a little confused. Is this the correct platform for the train to Bristol?" The station officer replies, "Yes, that's correct. It leaves from this platform, platform 6, at 4:20 p.m. Are you traveling with any large luggage?" You could answer, "Yes, I just have one suitcase with me." "Great, thank you so much for your help." Notice how providing brief, relevant details in your response, like the fact that you have one suitcase, helps to ensure the conversation is clear, efficient, and effective. Here's another story from everyday life. My neighbor, Mr. Peterson, recently started volunteering at a local community center. At first, he was quite nervous about interacting with so many different people from various backgrounds. He spent the first few days mostly observing the routines, asking questions when he was unsure, and gradually taking part in organizing small activities. Over time, his confidence grew. He became one of the most reliable volunteers. He helped lead workshops for children, and he even started training new volunteers himself. This story highlights that patience, careful observation, and active participation are absolutely essential for learning both new skills and a new language in a natural, comfortable way. It's about taking small steps to build confidence. Let's look at a travel situation, this time at a hotel. After a long day of travel, you might approach the front desk and say, "Good evening. We have a reservation under the name Jessica. Could you please confirm the room details for us?" The receptionist may look at their computer and reply, "Certainly, ma'am. You have booked a deluxe room with a mountain view for 2 nights. Is there anything special you would like us to prepare for your room?" You could then answer, "That's perfect, thank you. If it's possible, could you please provide some extra towels? We'd appreciate that, thank you." Notice how making polite requests and listening carefully to the confirmation details helps to improve communication and ensures a smooth start to your stay. Another story comes from my friend Sophia, who recently attended a large professional networking event. She was very nervous at first because she didn't know anyone there. The room was filled with strangers, but she decided to be brave. She decided to start conversations by simply asking people about their work, their projects, and their interests. She found that people were generally very happy to talk about themselves. Soon, she was engaged in several interesting conversations. She made some meaningful professional connections, learned new strategies for her own work, and got to practice speaking English in a confident professional setting. This demonstrates that genuine curiosity and active participation are wonderful tools for success in both social and professional situations. Here is a dialogue example at a bookstore. You could ask, "Hello, I'm looking for a nonfiction book on the topic of sustainable living. Could you recommend something for me?" The bookseller may respond, "Certainly. I would suggest The Zero Waste Home. It's very practical, with lots of easy-to-follow tips." You could reply, "That sounds exactly like what I need. It's great to have a practical guide. Thank you so much for your suggestion." Using descriptive language to explain what you're looking for and then listening carefully to the recommendation ensures clear and effective communication. Now let's think about a situation at a coffee shop. You might go up to the counter and say, "Good afternoon. I would like a cappuccino with almond milk, please. Also, could you suggest a light snack to go with it? Something not too sweet." The barista may reply, "Of course. Our blueberry muffins are freshly baked this morning and they are very popular. They're not overly sweet." You could answer, "That sounds perfect. I'll take one of those then. Thank you." Notice how polite phrasing and asking for specific suggestions can make even a simple daily conversation smooth and friendly. Here's a personal story about learning patience and observation. My husband and I decided to try painting a small mural on a wall in our living room. Neither of us are artists, so it was a big challenge. At first, it was very difficult to get the proportions and the colors right. Our first few attempts looked quite messy. We decided to take frequent breaks, to step back and observe our mistakes from a distance, and to adjust our design as we went. It was a slow process, but by the end of the weekend, the mural looked great and we felt an immense sense of pride. This story reminds us that taking your time, observing details carefully, and being patient with yourself are crucial for success in any creative or learning activity, including mastering the complexities of the English language. Another professional scenario involves attending a conference online. Imagine you are watching a presentation and you want to ask a question during the Q&A session. You could type your question in the chat box like this: "Thank you for your excellent presentation. Could you please elaborate on how your strategy can be applied specifically to small businesses with limited budgets?" The speaker may then respond, "Certainly, that's a great question. The approach is highly scalable and can be adapted for smaller teams with limited resources by focusing on." This shows that asking concise, specific, and respectful questions can improve your understanding and enhance communication in professional settings, even in a virtual environment. Let's practice a travel-related dialogue at an airport. You might be looking for your airline's check-in counter. You could ask an airport staff member, "Excuse me, could you please tell me where the check-in counter for Lufthansa is?" The airport staff may reply, "It's on the 3rd floor, near gate 12. Do you need any assistance with your luggage? You could answer, yes, I just have this one suitcase. 3rd floor, gate 12. Got it. Thank you very much. Notice how asking clear questions, listening for small but important details, and using polite responses makes your English sound professional and natural, and helps you navigate stressful environments like an airport with ease. Let's start with a story about my friend Liam, who recently faced a professional challenge. He works as a software developer and was assigned to fix a complex bug in an important project. The code was written by multiple teams over several years, so understanding it was not easy. It was like trying to navigate a maze with no map. Liam decided to take a very systematic approach. First, he spent an entire morning just reviewing all the existing documentation, trying to understand the original intent of the code. Then he ran a series of diagnostic tests to isolate the exact problem, pinpointing where the error was occurring. After a few hours of intense, focused work, he finally found the bug buried deep in an old module and corrected it. His team was incredibly grateful and praised him for his meticulous solution. Liam told me that staying calm and analyzing the problem step by step, rather than getting overwhelmed by its complexity, was the absolute key to his success. This story shows how patience, focus, and structured thinking can help solve even the most complex problems, whether they are in a piece of software or in our daily lives. Imagine a conversation with a colleague about improving team performance. You could say, "I've been thinking about our workflow, and I've noticed that we could enhance our efficiency if we streamlined the weekly reporting process. What are your thoughts on this?" Your colleague might reply, "That makes a lot of sense. It does take a lot of time. We could perhaps create a standardized template to make the reporting faster and more consistent across the team." Notice how suggesting improvements politely and framing it as a question, "What are your thoughts?" encourages collaboration rather than creating a feeling of confrontation or criticism. Now, let's discuss a travel story. Last autumn, my husband and I visited a historic town in Europe. We decided to join a guided walking tour led by a wonderful local historian named Clara. She explained the stories behind the ancient buildings, shared interesting local legends, and described cultural traditions with such passion. Some of the historical and architectural words she used were new to us, but by paying close attention to the context and politely asking questions when we were lost, we understood most of her detailed explanations. At the end of the tour, we felt enriched, not just with historical knowledge, but also with a whole new set of English vocabulary. This demonstrates that combining learning with genuine curiosity and interaction strengthens both your language skills and your general knowledge at the same time. Let's practice a professional scenario in a team meeting. You might say, "I suggest we take some time to review the project milestones for the next quarter. By prioritizing the high-impact tasks now, we can ensure we make smoother progress down the line." A team member may respond, "That's a solid approach. Let's draft a clear timeline and assign responsibilities for each milestone accordingly." Notice how using clear, proactive suggestions and showing initiative can improve not only understanding, but also the overall effectiveness of your professional communication. Here's a story from everyday life. My neighbor, Mr. Sullivan, decided he was going to renovate his own kitchen. He bought all the materials, spent weeks studying design ideas online, and planned every single step of the process carefully. During the renovation, however, unexpected issues appeared, as they always do. There were delayed deliveries for the cabinets, and some minor construction mistakes were made. Instead of getting frustrated and angry, he calmly adjusted his schedule and worked collaboratively with the contractors to find efficient solutions. By the end of the project, the kitchen looked absolutely beautiful, and Mr. Sullivan said he had learned more about planning, patience, and problem-solving than he had in years. This example shows that adaptability and maintaining a calm mindset are essential for success when facing unexpected obstacles. Let's practice a dialogue at a bookstore. You might ask the bookseller, "Hello, I'm searching for a book about leadership and management. Could you recommend something that's particularly engaging and not too dry?" The bookseller could respond, "Yes, of course." Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek is very informative and written in a very easy-to-read, story-driven style. You could reply, "Perfect. That sounds exactly like what I'm looking for. I'll take it. Thank you for your great recommendation." Notice how using precise vocabulary like engaging and not too dry and using polite phrasing ensures a smooth and professional communication experience. Here's another story about learning English naturally. My friend Ava started volunteering at an animal shelter. It's a cause she cares deeply about. She had to communicate constantly with other volunteers, the shelter staff, and visitors who were looking to adopt a pet, all in English. Initially, she struggled to understand instructions quickly, especially during busy or stressful situations. But she listened attentively. She wasn't afraid to ask clarifying questions like, "Could you repeat that, please?" Or, "So you want me to do this first, then that?" And she repeated sentences aloud to herself to make sure she remembered them. After a few weeks of this immersive experience, she was able to participate actively in all conversations, guide new volunteers, and even help organize adoption events. Ava's experience highlights that immersive practice in real-life situations you are passionate about can dramatically accelerate your language learning. Now consider a professional conversation in an office setting. You might say to a colleague, "I've reviewed the latest marketing report, and I noticed a few interesting trends that I think we could explore further. Can we set aside some time to discuss them in the next team meeting?" Your colleague may reply, "Absolutely. That's a great catch. Let's schedule a short session to analyze those trends together." Notice how sharing observations as opportunities and proposing solutions politely strengthens teamwork and enhances your communication skills. Here's a personal story from my life. One evening, my husband and I decided to build a small bookshelf for our living room from a flat pack box. At first, the instructions were incredibly confusing. Just a series of diagrams with no words, and some of the pre-drilled holes didn't seem to fit the screws perfectly. Instead of giving up and getting frustrated, we took a deep breath, measured everything carefully, adjusted the parts, and worked together as a team. By the end of the evening, the bookshelf was complete and surprisingly sturdy. This little story shows that patience, teamwork, and careful observation are vital skills for completing any task successfully, including the task of improving your English. Let's practice a dialogue at a train station. You might ask, "Excuse me, could you tell me which platform the train to Edinburgh leaves from?" The station officer may reply, "It departs from platform 9 at 5:45 p.m. Are you carrying any luggage with you?" You could answer, "Yes, just this one suitcase. Platform 9 at 5:45. Thank you for the information." Notice how including small but relevant details in your responses ensures clarity and helps conversations run smoothly, preventing any confusion. Here's another story from a professional context. My friend Hannah is a graphic designer. She was asked to create a very important presentation for a high-profile client. The client had a long list of specific requests, including certain colors, specific images, and particular font styles they wanted to use. Hannah created several drafts, and with each one she sought feedback from her team and the client. She made revisions patiently until the client was completely satisfied with the final product. She explained that listening carefully to the client's instructions and being genuinely open to feedback were crucial to delivering high-quality work that met their expectations. This story reminds us that attention to detail and a spirit of collaboration are essential for success in any profession. Let's look at a travel-related example. My husband and I once visited a coastal village where we wanted to try the authentic local cuisine. The restaurant owner, a friendly man named Mr. Chen, explained the traditional dishes on the menu and recommended some of his personal specialties. We asked him questions about the ingredients and the preparation methods. By listening carefully to his stories and engaging in a real conversation, we not only enjoyed a series of delicious meals, but also learned a lot of new culinary vocabulary in English. This story shows that curiosity and genuine interaction can improve both your cultural knowledge and your language skills simultaneously. Here's a dialogue for a cafe scenario. You might say, "Good morning. I'd like a latte with oat milk, please. Could you also suggest a pastry that would pair well with it?" The barista could respond, "Our almond croissant is very popular and it goes perfectly with a latte. The flavors complement each other well." You could reply, "That sounds excellent. I'll take one of those as well. Thank you." Notice how using polite requests and descriptive words, pair well, enhances the quality of your communication in these simple daily interactions. Now let's discuss a personal experience about public speaking. My friend Alex had to give a presentation at a conference for the very first time. He was incredibly nervous. He was worried about his pronunciation and that people wouldn't understand him. To prepare, he practiced his presentation in front of his husband multiple times. He also recorded himself on his phone so he could listen back and identify areas for improvement. He focused on his pacing, making sure he wasn't speaking too quickly, and on speaking with clarity. On the day of the conference, he delivered his presentation confidently and received very positive feedback from the audience. Alex's experience teaches us that thorough preparation, dedicated practice, and building self-confidence are absolutely critical for effective communication, especially in high-pressure situations. Here's another professional scenario. Imagine you are negotiating a contract with a new client. You could say, "I have reviewed your requirements and I believe we can meet your expectations. Perhaps we could discuss the timeline and the budget in more detail to ensure we have a mutual agreement on all points." The client may respond, "That approach works for me. Let's finalize the specific details in writing." Using polite, professional language and focusing on clear explanations ensures that negotiations are productive and that both parties feel respected. Here is a story from everyday life. My neighbor, Mrs. Davis, decided to organize a local gardening club. She invited all the neighbors, planned activities, and created a schedule for sharing gardening tips. At first, only a few people attended the meetings, but as word spread about how friendly and helpful the club was, it began to grow. Mrs. Davis told me that her patience, consistent effort, and her warm, welcoming communication style are what helped the club thrive. This example shows how persistence and maintaining a positive, interactive environment can lead to success in both social and learning environments, including learning a new language. Let's practice a dialogue at a library. You might ask the librarian, "Excuse me, could you please help me find books about modern architecture?" The librarian could respond, "Certainly. That section is on the second floor. Are you looking for recommendations for beginners or for more advanced readers?" You could reply, "I'm looking for something that's advanced but still easy to understand. Thank you for your help." Notice how asking precise questions and listening carefully to the follow-up questions ensures you get the most effective help in communication. Now let's talk about learning English through hobbies. My friend Grace started photography as a hobby. She joined an English-speaking photography club where the members would share tips, discuss different techniques, and give each other constructive feedback on their photos. Initially, she struggled to understand all the technical terms related to cameras and lighting, but by asking questions, taking notes during the meetings, and practicing regularly, she improved both her English vocabulary and her photography skills at the same time. Grace's experience demonstrates that combining your hobbies with your language practice can make the learning process much more enjoyable, practical, and effective. Let me share a story about my friend Samuel, who works as an event planner. Last month, he was asked to organize a very large outdoor corporate event. On the morning of the event, the weather forecast changed unexpectedly, and a heavy rain began to fall. Most of the team started to panic, but Samuel quickly made alternative arrangements. He directed the team to move the main seating area under some large temporary shelters he had on standby. He informed the caterers about the adjustments to the serving plan, and he kept the attendees updated on the changes in a calm and reassuring manner. Despite the terrible weather, the event went smoothly, and the company praised his quick thinking and his leadership. From Samuel's experience, we learned that remaining calm under pressure and always having contingency plans is essential in both professional and personal life. Now, imagine you are giving advice to a colleague who is struggling with a presentation they are creating. You could say, "I noticed your slides are very informative and have great data. I think adding a few more visuals like images or charts might help the audience follow your points even better. What do you think about trying that?" Give her quote. Your colleague may respond, "That's a really good idea. I'll make those changes and see how it improves the clarity." This shows that offering constructive suggestions in a polite and collaborative way can enhance communication and improve the quality of work without offending or discouraging anyone. Here's a story from travel. Last winter, my husband and I visited a small mountain village. We decided we wanted to explore the surrounding forests. We met a local guide, Diego, who explained how to navigate the trails safely and how to identify interesting local wildlife. At first, his instructions were a bit difficult to follow because of his accent and the specific local terms he used, But by paying very close attention, asking him to repeat things when we needed to, and asking questions, we successfully completed the hike and had an amazing time. This experience taught us that careful listening, observation, and active participation can improve both your comprehension and your confidence when speaking English in new environments. Let's practice a dialogue in a professional environment. You might say in a meeting, "I'd like to propose a new marketing strategy that I believe could significantly increase our engagement on social media. Would it be possible to review it in tomorrow's meeting?" A colleague might reply, "Certainly. Please prepare a short summary of the key points so we can discuss it efficiently." Notice how making clear suggestions and using polite requests helps to create a professional and productive discussion. Here's a story about everyday life. My neighbor, Mr. Peterson, decided to learn woodworking as a hobby. He bought some basic tools, watched many online tutorials, and started with very simple projects. Initially, his pieces were uneven and his cuts were not perfect. But he kept practicing every weekend. He measured carefully, and he gradually improved his skills. By the end of the month, he had successfully created a beautiful small shelf for his living room. This story illustrates that persistence, careful observation, and taking a step-by-step approach to practice can lead to great improvement in any skill, including language learning. Now let's consider a conversation in a bookstore. You could ask, "Hello, I'm looking for a biography about a famous scientist. Could you recommend one for me?" The bookseller may respond, "Certainly." The biography, Einstein, His Life and Universe, is very detailed and extremely engaging. You could reply, "That sounds excellent. I'll take it. Thank you so much." Using precise language and polite phrasing ensures clear communication and helps you build confidence in your English speaking abilities. Here's a story from my friend Lily. She joined a local cooking club to improve her English and to meet new people in her neighborhood. At first, she struggled to understand all the instructions from the chef, especially with all the noise and activity in the kitchen. But she listened carefully. She repeated phrases aloud to herself, and she asked questions whenever she was unsure. After just a few sessions, she could follow entire recipes in English without any problems, and she even started explaining techniques to new members herself. Lily's experience demonstrates that combining hobbies with language practice can accelerate your learning while making it a fun and social experience. Now, imagine a professional scenario in a meeting. You might say, "I've reviewed the financial report and I noticed some trends that could help us optimize our budget for the next quarter. Could we discuss some possible adjustments?" A colleague may respond, "Yes, that's a valuable observation. Let's schedule a short session to analyze the numbers together in more detail." Notice how focusing on facts and using polite, collaborative language enhances communication and improves a team's problem-solving abilities. Here is a personal story. My husband and I decided to organize a small home library in our spare room. We sorted hundreds of books. We categorized them by genre, and we labeled each shelf. Initially, the task was overwhelming because we had so many books. But we divided the work between us and completed it systematically, one shelf at a time. After we finished, we found it was so much easier to locate any book we wanted, and it felt incredibly satisfying to see them all so organized. This story teaches us that organization, planning, and teamwork can improve efficiency in all kinds of tasks. Let's practice a dialogue at a train station. You could ask, "Excuse me, does the train to Cardiff stop at Bristol on the way?" The station officer may reply, "Yes, it does. It stops at Bristol at 3:50 p.m. Are you traveling with any luggage?" Yeah. You could answer, "Yes, just one suitcase. Thank you for your help." Notice how including essential details in your questions and answers makes the conversation smooth and avoids any potential confusion. Here's another professional story. My friend Sophia works in an advertising agency. She was asked to create a campaign for a new product with a very short time frame. She immediately prioritized the most important tasks. She collaborated closely with her team, and she communicated clearly and frequently with the clients to manage their expectations. Despite the incredibly tight deadlines, the campaign was completed successfully and was a huge hit. Sophia said that staying organized, asking questions when he was unsure, and maintaining clear, open communication were the key factors in their success. This story shows that structure, focus, and collaboration are absolutely vital in a fast-paced professional life. Let's look at a travel-related conversation. Imagine you are at a hotel reception desk. You could say, "Hello, I have a reservation under the name Jessica. Could you confirm the check-in details for me, please?" Sue, the receptionist, may reply, "Of course. You have booked a deluxe room for 2 nights. Would you like us to prepare any special amenities for you?" You could answer, "Yes, could you please provide some extra pillows for the room? Thank you so much." Using polite questions and paying close attention to the responses ensures clarity and helps to build your confidence in real-life interactions. Here's a story about learning through mistakes. My friend Jack decided to try baking bread at home. The very first time he tried, he forgot to preheat the oven properly, and the bread came out undercooked in the middle. Instead of giving up, he carefully read the instructions again, followed all the steps precisely, and tried a second time. The second attempt was perfect. This story is a simple reminder that mistakes are a normal and important part of learning. Careful attention to detail leads to improvement, whether you are in the kitchen or you are mastering English grammar. Now imagine a professional conversation in an office. You might say, "I've noticed that our weekly reports could be much more efficient if we used a shared template. Would it be possible to implement something like that?" A colleague may respond, "That's a great suggestion. I can create a draft template and we can review it together as a team." Using collaborative language and offering practical solutions strengthens communication and improves teamwork. Here's a personal story from my life. One weekend, my husband and I decided to organize a small garden party for our neighbors. We planned the decorations, we prepared the food, and we invited a few people over. Some things didn't go exactly as planned. For example, a cake I baked didn't rise properly. But we adapted by serving some alternative snacks, and we all just laughed about it and enjoyed the event anyway. This story teaches us that flexibility, good planning, and simply enjoying the process are important in any activity, including your language practice. Let's practice a dialogue in a cafe. You might say, "Good afternoon. I'd like a cappuccino and a slice of carrot cake, please. Do you have any specials today?" The barista may reply, "Yes, we have a freshly baked apple tart that pairs really well with coffee." You could answer, "Oh, that sounds wonderful. I think I'll have that instead. Thank you." Notice how asking politely and listening carefully can create friendly, natural interactions and might even lead to a better slice of cake. Here's another story about professional development. My friend Samuel joined an online writing course to improve his business English skills. He wrote essays every week, he received detailed feedback from the instructors, and he revised his work based on their suggestions. Initially, he struggled with some complex grammar and sentence structure, but with consistent practice, he improved significantly. Samuel said that regular practice and being open to constructive feedback were the absolute keys to his progress. This story demonstrates the importance of continuous learning and applying the feedback you receive in real life. Let's look at a travel-related scenario. Imagine you are at a bus station asking for directions. You could say, "Excuse me, which bus goes to the city center and how long does the journey take?" The staff may reply, "Bus number 12 goes directly to the city center. The journey takes about 25 minutes depending on traffic. Do you need a ticket?" You could answer, "Yes, one ticket, please. Thank you for your help." Including key details in your questions and listening carefully to the answers ensures clear and effective communication. Here's a personal story about patience and learning. My neighbor, Mrs. Morgan, decided she wanted to learn how to paint with watercolors. She started with simple sketches, and although her first few attempts were not perfect, she practiced every single day. She studied different techniques online, and she gradually improved. After a few months of consistent effort, she had created several very impressive paintings that are now hanging in her home. This story shows that consistent effort and learning from your own experience can lead to mastery, whether you are learning a new hobby or a new language. As we reach the end of today's episode, I truly hope these stories, dialogues, and examples have given you some practical and engaging ways to improve your English listening, comprehension, and speaking skills. Remember, the journey to fluency is built on consistent practice and active engagement in real-life situations. Every little bit of practice makes a huge difference. Try to incorporate English into your daily routines, whether it's through having small conversations, reading an article, or listening to podcasts just like this one. When you listen, try to notice the specific vocabulary people use, the way they structure their sentences, and the polite expressions that make conversations flow smoothly. And please don't ever hesitate to repeat phrases aloud to yourself to practice your pronunciation and build your fluency. Language learning is a journey, not a destination, and every small step you take forward counts. Listening carefully, asking questions when you need to, and actively practicing new words and phrases will help you communicate with more confidence and sound more natural over time. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today here on English in Advance. Remember to keep exploring the language, stay curious, and know that learning English every single day brings you one step closer to speaking fluently, just like a native speaker. Stay motivated, practice as consistently as you can, and make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode. I'll see you then with more stories, more dialogues, and more practical tips to enhance your English skills.